Hey guys, I had a project pop up recently that I'm about to start working on, but I thought this would be a good way to go from start to finish on a series design. It could be a train wreck, it could take forever, but hopefully not. So I figured I would just take a swing at it and go from start to finish and where I am on it. So, and yeah, feel free to fast forward through this if you need to just kind of hit certain sections or you want to know what I did as far as textures or typography or colors or whatever. So this is again could be a little bit long, but feel free to move around on it. And I'm going to pause it off and on if I need to, if I need to take some time and figure out some things. So hopefully it won't be too long. So the series is Throwing Shade. It's for a student ministry. So they've seen some things out there that they kind of like, but wouldn't really quite hitting the mark. So they reached out to me to work on it. So I started going down really before I started any project. I kind of just start looking at weird stuff, and if I have an idea of really where I want to go, then I'll just kind of brainstorm. So I use Design Inspiration a lot. It's a site that you can really type in. You can select colors. You can select. You can type in words. So I would start with things like abstract or vintage or whatever. I knew I wanted to be kind of weird, but this is sort of like Pinterest for designers. So Pinterest is great too. You can pull that stuff from all over the web. But I would go in and say, I like this photo, so I can click it and save it to a little collection. And so eventually I started pulling photos and really tried to hone in on really where I wanted to go. I know I wanted to be kind of weird, so I found some of these weird images. I really like these color palettes and this kind of texture. And then that led me to, well, what if I did like an old boxing kind of poster? So I wanted to be sort of abstract, not be so literal about throwing shade. So, maybe passive aggressive boxing poster might be kind of where we want to go with it. So, again, but I like these old photos. That led me to, man, those old fisticuff type of pictures from way back in the day. So, started doing some searches around here and figuring out what was available to use. A great site for finding photos that may not have any kind of copyright issues on it is the Library of Congress. They have tons of photos of loc.gov. You can search for all kinds of stuff, old newspaper articles and old photos. Sometimes they have some restrictions, or they just kind of leave it up to you. And sometimes they're public domain, so you can go through, click on them, and search for that information. But a good amount of the time they're available to use. So I'm going to manipulate these a good bit too, so it should be fun. So another weird site that I would use for inspiration, because I knew I wanted to go a weird way, is this Tumblr called Black and WTF. They have so many old weird, super weird photos from way back in the day, stuff that just makes you tilt your head a little bit. This kind of weird stuff. So I would just go down this path and just see what kind of spoke to me. So it's a fun little rabbit hole to go down. So I think I'm going to lean towards this direction here. I really like this off-white color with this red and blue tint with this kind of gradient sort of photo in the background, black and white photo. So that's where we're going. So I've already spent some time digging through the Library of Congress and found some photos I can use, and so we're just going to go down that direction. So again, hopefully this isn't too long, but we can learn something. So I've already opened up Photoshop. There is a project that I just worked on, which was this one, and I at one point I had that off-white look, and I wanted to use that again. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new document, and we'll do this 1920 by 1080, and I'm going to hit create. And so in here, I knew I already had a texture, this kind of background paper, so I'm going to right-click on that and basically just send it to that document. So I'm gonna hit OK. And so now this is really subtle texture, kind of a dirty paper texture. So we can add to this if we need to, but for now this will be a good start. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and save this really quick. We'll call this Throwing Shade, and we'll throw that here, Throwing Shade. We'll make a Photoshop folder, Photoshop, and hit create. Save right there. All right. So the first thing I'm gonna do is figure out what images I want to use. So I didn't want this to be, just two men or two women. I want to be kind of male and female. So I grabbed, let's see here if I can find my folder. So here's some of the images I was looking through. So, random. I had the idea of using maybe like a megaphone or a gramophone. So I have those as well. So this one here is pretty cool. This one here is some interesting little outfits. This one's good. These are a pretty classic one here. Another gramophone picture, and this one here. So I'm trying to figure out which one was going to work best with the perspective. So I think this one is nice and straight on. Just looks very classic. And then probably maybe one of these as well. This one's also pretty good. Her taking that jab. So let's start with this one. So I'm going to open up this in another document. I'm going to go to open up in Photoshop, and so now I have it as its original native size. So that way I'm not dragging it into my 1920 by 1080 and scaling it down. It can be its own thing. So so I'm going to take some time and cut this out. I'm going to duplicate that, delete this. So I'm going to use a tablet that I have. This just speeds up things instead of trying to erase it with your mouse. So now if I can just find my pen that goes with it. All right, there we go. Okay, so I got my pen. I'm going to hit the E for eraser, and I'm going to change the size pretty small, just a slight bit of softness on that, since this photo is a bit old. Probably want to make my brush a little bit smaller. I'm using the bracket keys on the keyboard and my pen in my left hand because I'm a lefty. So now I'm just going to erase, and I'll probably just do this for a little bit to give you an idea of how I go about doing this part. There's probably a bunch of other methods, but every time I do it, mine just doesn't turn out as smooth. So I end up just doing it with an eraser anyway. So again, I'm just moving it, just going slightly, nice and slow, and moving around the image here. And if you cut into it, I think it's okay as long as it doesn't look ridiculous. I'm trying to keep that black line off there because it's going to be on white, so I don't want it to look like, I straight up cut it out. Hope it'll look a little bit more natural. So again, just going around nice and smooth. Didn't have to be absolutely perfect, but close. All right, so I'm probably gonna just pause this, but again, I'm gonna go all the way around and make sure that I've covered every size, and then I'll come back once I get it all cut out. One thing I did want to point out while I was working through this is I wanted to keep his shadow on his feet because I might try to blend that in with the background. So I'm going to just do a big little loop here. Make sure I'm keeping all that stuff in the shadow. And we could recreate that manually, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and keep that, and then we'll fix it later. Another option you can do is to add just a background, something, a nice bold color. So maybe like a green or something. And I'm going to put that in the background here. It thinks it's a grayscale. Layer, new. Let's see, image mode. It's RGB. Don't merge. Change that. Do red. It's fine. So now I can really see the edges and make sure that they look about right. So some of these little things may be hard to see if you have that transparent look on there, but anyway, so I'm going to clean that up a little bit, and then just continue my drawing, continue my erasing. I'll be right back. All right, so now I have my image all cut out. Almost actually forgot this little part here, so I'm going to go in and clean this up a little bit here. There we go. So once you get your image cut out, then we just want to make sure that your brush was thick enough so that when you select the outside, it selects everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out, and everything looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit W on the keyboard, and that's my wand tool. And if you don't have that, you can click here and go to Magic Wand. And I'm going to select, I'm going to make my tolerance up here all the way to 255. and basically it's just going to select everything that you can see. So here's a great example. So I haven't quite cut out this image perfectly because it has this double line on it, means that it's selecting everything. So somewhere on this image, my eraser was a little bit too small and is there's some pixels that I need to get rid of. So I'm going to zoom in to figure out where that is. Hit H on the keyboard to get my hand tool and move it around. So I'm looking for where these dotted lines kind of intersect, and it's right there, I think. So I'm going to hit Command D to deselect, hit E on the keyboard to erase that, select that, and then we go to clean that up. So I'm going to hit W on the keyboard again and select my background, and there we go. So now it's just selecting the background. So now I can hit delete and delete that. And I'm going to move my actually, let me not do that. I thought I moved him, so I'm going to W. Come on. Oh, sorry, select delete. There we go. Then I'm going to select this little section on here, so W, select that. So I got all kinds of pixels here, so I'm just going to delete that or deselect, hit E. I'm just going to erase this because it's pretty small. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's zoom out here. Looks pretty solid. So kept his shadow. We'll solve that later. And this one's good to go. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to save this as Boxer Male. And we'll keep that in assets, and I'll hit save. Okay, so now let's get the girl. So let's find the right image here. I really like that one too, but we'll come back to that. Let's go with this one. So I'm going to right click, open with Photoshop, and I think I'm going to take this one here. So because there won't be too much. If I went with the other one, you know, I'd have to recreate her arm, and that just may take some time. So here I think I can see everything on this one. So I'm going to duplicate this, delete this background. Now I have this layer to work with, and you can go ahead and add your background if you want. So this green, throw this over here. It probably thinks it's a grayscale, so I'm going to layer image RGB. Don't merge. I can change this color to something bright. Throw that down there. All right, so now I can start erasing her. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to hit E, bump up my size a little bit here. So here, you know, her image is really pretty soft. So again, I'm just going to keep that right about 90 or so, and then start erasing around her image. It might be a little bit too. Let's see here. Just a little bit of softness. And we can use our sharpen tool later on and try to. Oh boy, I did a bad job on her nose there. There we go. So that's a little bit better. And using Option Command Z to undo a few times is very helpful. If you haven't got into shortcuts, use your shortcuts as much as you can. So again, I'm going to go through and clean this, go through and cut her out and clean it up. So a good example here is like on her hair. You know, it's just not quite. I'm trying to get rid of any of that background that you see on that. Same thing with her nose. We can go in and clean all this up later, but hers is a little bit more difficult since it's so fuzzy. But hopefully we'll get to a good spot. So I'll pause it and I'll be right back. All right, so I got the woman cut out here. One thing I want to show you too that I do a lot is how to make sure that I've cut out all of the actual pieces and no leftovers. If I double click on this, the layer styles, I can go to stroke. Let's see, stroke here. And it'll show you if there's any extra pixels laying around. So you see up here that I have some that I didn't quite get. So if I hit my erase tool, I can erase that. That way it'll just make sure I'm nice and clean. This probably wouldn't show up anyways, but now at least I know everything is nice and clear there. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to turn this off here, and I can turn off that stroke. Don't need that anymore. And so I'm going to save this as Boxer Female. There we go. Save into here. Save this as a PSD. and hit save. I'm going to go back to my main PSD here, throw in shade, and we'll go bring in those PSD. So I'm going to file and place, I think I'm place linked. That way I can edit them if I need to. So I can do these at the same time, not just one at a time. So I'll put the male in here and hit enter, and we'll go to file, place linked, and female, and hit place. They don't really have to be linked, but I could go in and make those smart objects. The main goal is just that I don't drop them in here and then scale them too small to where I can't get them back. So I guess really I could go to here and I could go to convert to smart object. So now it's kind of embedded. Let's see. Let's kind of place them where we want to go. So I don't want them like facing each other, because I don't want it to seem like they're boxing one another, but more just we're all kind of guilty of throwing shade and all that good stuff. So maybe let's see, I'm gonna scale them up so that they have the same proportions. Scale it down just a tad bit. Okay. I think that works. I might do something different with their legs at some point, but let's see which one looks better if he's on top or she's on top. Let's see. I'm gonna place them so they don't look too strange, like they're stepping on each other. So there may be some shadowing and some masking we can do to make that feel right, but hopefully this will work. So, and if not, we'll find another image that'll work. So roughly this will be our position. And so now I'm going to do some blending modes to try to make this look like it's been printed on this image. So I'm going to go to the male. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to hit V on the keyboard to make sure my pointer tool is selected. I'm going to do Shift plus and minus to go through some of the blending modes that are right here. So let's dissolve. It's probably going to be multiply. Will be probably what we're going for. I do like color burn as well. But I'm going to cycle through these just to make sure I'm selecting the right ones. So yeah, let's do we'll do multiply, and then what I can also do is duplicate that, Command J, and I could go to color burn, and then I can go maybe back to the one that's multiplied and drop that down maybe like 50%. So I'm getting kind of the best of both worlds, maybe even lower, something like that. There we go. So that feels much more like it's been printed on. So that feels pretty good. So I'm going to put those in a group together. I'm going to highlight those and hit Command J or Command G, and we'll call this male. And we'll do the same with the female. Now, when we do the blending modes on her, it's going to start blending through their legs together, which isn't quite what we want, but we'll try to fix that in a bit. So I'm going to duplicate that. So one's multiply, the other will be color burn, and then I'll take multiply and drop that down a good bit there. So let's see what his was. Color burn 100%, 29% was the multiply. So one thing I noticed really quickly is that the blacks on the woman are a bit strong. I'm going to put those into a group. Oops. Command G. I'll call this female. So hers are really black compared to his. Is a little more brown tint. So I'm gonna try to fix that some. So let's try to bring hers down a bit. So I'm going to attach a levels adjustment to her. I believe this is levels here, and see if this fixes it. Now I want to do a clipping mask, which is right here, to make sure that it's just affecting that group. So then I'm going to adjust some of these here. So that's not quite right. That helps a little bit. Trying to give them kind of the same tone. Maybe adjust some in the middle here. So hers probably won't be able to come out too much. It's really just getting that white. So do something like that. So maybe we'll just take the male and we'll darken him up just a tad bit. So I'm going to do another clipping mask here. And let's see, pull those down some. So that looks pretty good. And we can also take this entire thing, and I'm going to throw that into a group. And we'll call this boxers. Nope. Boxers, and I can maybe dial back the intensity there a little bit as well with the opacity. So that looks good. Now with the blending here. Let's hope that this is where I want them to be. So what I'm going to do is I need to select where this guy is so that I can erase where her leg is. So hers needs to be in front of his. So what I'm going to do is, let's see, I want to select the woman, I believe. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to hold down Command and click on her shape. So this is her shape here, and I need to erase, really do a clipping mask to hide his leg so that they're not blending together. So what I'm going to do is go into the mail group here, and I think I can add a clipping mask to that entire folder. So I'm going to click on this little button here, clipping mask. No, I don't want to do that, so hang on. What I want to do is hold down Option, and with this selected, I can hold down Option and click it, and then it erases. It's making a clipping mask, which is just anything that is white will show up, anything that's black will disappear. So her shape is what is in black, and everything else is in white. So that's in the right direction, not too bad. So what I could do even is then if I wanted to move him around a little bit, I can leave that right where it is. I can go into here and select these two and then move them, to where it that clipping mask stays still, and he's always behind her. So that works out kind of nice. So if I could do something like that. All right. Another thing we can do is mess with this shadow. I think I'm going to use this clipping mask again, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to select my brush and then have black selected, which is good. I'm going to make this super soft, so turn that hardness all the way down, bump up my size some, and then probably even bring my opacity down. So I can either make this gray or I can make the opacity change. So I'm going to make this like 30%. So it's really doing like a light gray. So maybe if I kind of dust this in here. I'll do 100% to get that into a nice soft. And this may end up just not working right. I need to do it manually, but yeah, it's kind of looking a little silly to be. That's not terrible. Drop this down a good bit here. Make it even softer. Don't want to get where I'm running into a shoe too much. So that's not great. We could probably that works, from far away. If you get too close, it kind of falls apart. But we may mess with that some for the final. So we could spend a while tweaking this. We may even want to add another levels, and I want to just do his foot. So I'm going to delete this one and do. Let's see. Oh boy. Oh no, making big mistakes. I'm going to make all this black. So B, bump this up. So what I'm going to do is, where's my brush here? Oh geez. Maybe it's too big. There we go. So I'm going to make this entire thing black, and nothing's showing up just because I'm doing the clipping mask, but I'm going to turn this black there, and then I just want to do his leg really. So I'm going to be on the keyboard, and this time I'm going to do a smaller brush, slower hardness, and then I'm going to kind of paint where his leg is right here. Okay, there we go. So I think I need just more contrast in this section. So now it's just going to affect his leg because I've added this clipping mask. So now I'm going to kind of pull that in a little bit. Now I'm getting some of that same these same tones on their leg. So that feels a lot better. All right, so that's feeling pretty good. Now let's go start messing with some colors in here. So I'm gonna pause it for a bit and see if I can go ahead and figure out what I'm gonna do, and then I'll explain what I do that way just to save time. So I'll be right back. So I got the colors I want. I referenced the photo that we were looking at earlier to get some of these nice colors. I really like the color palette. We may adjust that some. I like this one too. Pretty similar, but anyway, so I got these in here, but I want to really figure out what, because I think in here I'm going to have these kind of coming out from behind the boxers, and then it's going to say throwing shade in these boxes. So I need to figure out what font I'm going to use before I really mess with these and dirty them all up. So I'm going to do that. Usually what I do when I'm trying to find a font, I'm just going to move these over for a second here. Throw these over here. Actually, no, let's keep right in the middle. And I'm going to T on the keyboard, make me a text box, and type in throwing shade. And I'm going to go to my character panel, and let's see if I can bump that up. This same color as this. All right. So I'm going to try to find a font that it sort of feels retro, but not too cheesy. I would probably go through what I have already and see what, maybe something that works with this project. So how I would go about doing that is clicking on this and just kind of clicking up here where it's the font title is, and then just using my arrow keys to kind of cycle through the fonts that I have. Now this could take a really long time. So if this is usually kind of like where I just don't know which one I'm going for until I see it, and it just takes forever. So the other way around this would be to reference some other old photos, so we can go back to this one, taking a look at this here. These are pretty basic fonts, nothing too crazy, so we could find something that matches that. You don't want to go too insane with some of the stuff that's low-hanging fruit. If you go to Define or something like that, there's just some low-hanging fruit, so hopefully we won't do that. But another good site, what was it? Yeah, so Fonts in Use was the site I was thinking of. So you can, there's a lot of cool ways you can see how fonts have been used in the past. A lot of old retro designs and things. I'm going to cycle through some of my fonts, figure out what really works. Another good place to go that I like to use is really Google Fonts has a great selection of good fonts you can use. They're all free, so you can go in and type in, your text, throwing shade, apply to all fonts, and then you can pick, I do want something kind of thick, so I could go in here and say I want to lean on the thick side and figure out which one feels retro without being cheesy. So I'm gonna spend some time looking for fonts, and maybe I'll come up with a few, and then I'll come back and we'll pick one. So I'll be right back shortly. All right, so after probably 30 minutes or so, I've gone through different fonts. I've ended up just kind of cycling through the ones I've had. I didn't download anything new, so I've narrowed it down to maybe 3, I guess about 5. So I'll show you what I'm coming up with. So I'm trying to keep it pretty basic, based off of some of these designs here. Keeping it somewhat realistic without being cheesy like we were talking about. So I've gone through a couple of these. This one's a little bit more condensed, which I like. This one feels a bit cartoony, probably won't go that route. This one I liked, but it's hard to read for some reason, but it jumped out to me, and I'm not going to use it, but I just want to show you that it's something I would not have gone for, but it's kind of interesting. Maybe you can add some of these like big letters faded out in the background or something, but let's start here and see where we go. So this is Barlow semi-condensed. All right, so where this is going to go, I'm not really sure. I think I'm going to kind of have it coming out of here. Maybe the perspective is going to be off a little bit, so let's start messing around with that. So I'm going to put all these other fonts just in a folder so I can use them later, maybe. Additional fonts. Now we can just turn that off. Come back to that. All right, so let's mess around with, first let's take throwing shade. I'm going to make these 2 different layers. So I'm going to take shade out of here. So I have throwing, duplicate that, and type in shade here. All right, so now I have my fonts there. I'm going to turn those off for now and mess around with getting these in the background. So I wonder if I might make these smart layers. Let's do some tests. So I'm going to right click on this, go to convert to smart object, and then I think I'm going to skew it. Actually, you know what? So I'm going to here, and so here's my smart object. So now I'm actually gonna go to image canvas size. I just want to see some of the sides of it. So I'm gonna go 4 inches by 1 inch. So a little bit bigger than the actual thing. Hit OK. So now I can see the sides a little bit. So I'm going to roughen these up a little bit. So I'm going to go to my brushes. If you haven't gotten into brushes, there's tons of sites where you can download free brushes and then install them. I'm sure you can find a tutorial on how to do that. But some really nice ways to kind of grunge up some stuff. So I'm going to do that in here. I think I'm going to use some brushes. I might use some different layers, but we'll start with grunges. So I have a few that I use a lot. Just gotta find out which ones they are here. So some of these other grungy ones, you want to make sure they are a bit big too. I need to really go in and clean some of these out. But scratches, oil stains is a really good one that I use. So I'm gonna click on one of these, and I'm gonna hit. I'm gonna make a clipping mask, just like we did earlier. So now I'm going to make sure my brush is set to black. So I'm gonna go around and kind of dirty this up just a little bit. Nothing too crazy, but just enough there. I think I can take a selection tool, maybe do this, maybe feather it a good bit. Let's see what happens, and then get my brush tool, and then it'll just kind of affect that section, but I need to feather it a whole lot more. So let's see, let's make that like 100. Let's see what that does. Still not great. I don't really use that feature a whole lot, but it works a little bit. Some of these other ones have some speckles that are like really far away. Actually, just like that. And then you can even turn down your opacity on your brush a little bit and get again just those little bit of speckles there. All right, so it looks pretty good. I'm going to roughen up the corners a lot. So kind of like that cat. So it looked almost like a paint stroke or something. So I'm going to, do that. I'll put my opacity and start kind of eating away at this this corner here. So now you can even go into your brush little settings here and rotate it. So I want it backwards. So I'm going to click on that a couple times. Really kind of mess that up. All right, so let's see what happens here. So now I'm going to save this and go back to my throwing shade. So it's messed up a little bit here. That looks okay. That looks a little fuzzy. So I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna undo that. I think that brush's quality wasn't great. So let's see what else we can do here. I have some that I use. Let's see if I can find them. Corners or something. Let's try these. So then I can make this nice and small. So this should be fairly high res. See what that does. We hit save and go to throwing shade. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Maybe roughen that up just a little bit more. Let's go with this for now. Maybe add some of this right here. There we go. Okay, let's try that. All right, so that's looking all right. We can add some more to it later, but now let's try to. So my thought was maybe I can take this and do a little perspective shift on it. Hopefully it doesn't kill my Make it look too weird. No, not skew. Distort. Just drag that in here. Let's mess with that. So I'm going to throw that here. And let's mess with some blending modes. Move this blue out of the way for now. But this is kind of getting somewhere where I want it to be, I think. So that's darken. You have multiply. That's kind of cool. Color burn. All these work pretty well. It's a little too pink. So I'm just using, I'm going to click on my layer, I'm hitting shift and multiply, color burn. So let's just go with, multiply for now. So it's looking pretty good. Now what if I just, let's do the same thing. So again, I'm going to take my next layer and I'm going to go to convert to smart object, double click on that, and make my canvas size a bit bigger. So 4 and 1. That way I can see the edges. Add that clipping mask. B on the keyboard. So now this is the corner that I want to roughen up. So I'm going to go to my brush settings. I really like these corner ones. So I'm going to do a scale that down a good bit. Kind of roughen those up some. That's probably a little bit too big. Something like that. It's really large. Oh boy. Oop. So again, just kind of like I'm getting a little bit too out of control, but we can always come back and fix it, so that's the good thing. Whoa, that's a big one. But when you're messing with brushes, you do want to make sure you get some decent sized brushes in there. So you can go and kind of rough these edges up just a little bit. Go back to my oil stains. Where were they? Roughen these edges up a little bit. Throw in some random specks in there. All right, let's try that. So I'm going to hit save and go back to my throwing shade. So now we have these nice dirty images here. So I'm going to transform this one, Command T, and perspective. Push that up something like that. Try to match this one a little bit. And need to just distort that coming this way some, because it's a little bit too. Somewhere around in here is where we want to be. Okay. Do some blending modes on that. Probably multiply. We'll go linear burn on that one. Alright, so maybe we'll add, let's throw in some text here. So with this, I think I can skew it. Let's see. Let me actually take it out of the text box, copy that. I'm just going to delete this. I'm just going to click instead of clicking and dragging. I'm going to make a I'm just going to click and then paste it. And now I can grab my move tool, move that up here, and I think I can skew it, and I can keep my skew. Let's see. I guess I can't rotate. Let's see. No, but what I can do, I can right click on this. I'm going to go to duplicate layer. I'm going to send it to rectangle 1. I believe is what it was. Rectangle 1. No, that's the wrong one. But that's okay. We'll move it around. So there it is. So this is going to be shade. And I'm going to bump that up. Okay. Stick it right down in the middle. I don't know if so I threw this clipping mask right on top of the letters to kind of get some of that same grunginess. And you can even go in here and click this and even change your size of your clipping mask to affect those letters a bit more. So I'm just going to move them around just a little bit. So that looks good enough. All right, right click on this. I'm going to go to, I'm going to send this layer to rectangle 1 copy. Okay. And this is going to become throwing. Oops. Throwing. Okay. And this is a bit too much here on this clipping mask, so I'm going to size that. And you want to make sure you unlink it so you don't stretch out your letters there. So, so something like that. I'm just a little worried that the throwing and the shade are going to feel a bit off due to the length of the letters. But so for instance, on this one, I want to remove that little line. So I'm going to go back to my clipping mask and select white. Scale this back, and then I can just erase that a little bit. There we go. All right, and let's save that. Make sure this one is saved. So I'm going to go back to my throwing shade. Turn this one off. I'm going to mess around with it a little bit. I will come back shortly once I kind of figure out where I want to go with it next and try to solve this text issue. So stand by. All right, so for now, I think I'm going to add these stars in here. This is kind of my best fix for now. So I just have this PNG star that I threw in here. So I'm going to duplicate that a couple of times. Hopefully this will kind of help fill some of that space a little bit. So I think that looks about right. Maybe they need to come up just a little bit. That looks good. So I'm going to group that together and call that stars. Maybe throw this grungy layer on top of that there. That looks good. Can move that around some maybe. Get a little bit more of that grunginess to it. Something like that. Okay, so then I'm going to take this, I'm going to duplicate that back to the rectangle 1 copy. I need to rename those for sure, but for now we'll go with it. All right, so this is the throwing, so I'm going to slide this down. And that looks pretty good. Probably can get away. Well, we'll just do this for now. Then I need to move that mask down here to get some of that grunginess on the stars. So hopefully this one won't be an issue. I guess I could just cover that up. So get my brush tool. I'm just gonna kind of delete that right there. Maybe I'll do that just right now. So something like that. Okay, save that. Go back to the thing here. So, oh, I didn't save my other one. And save. So now I have these stars here. So I think in the middle here I'm going to do maybe like a old school microphone or something. That's kind of my thought. All right, so I found a mic. I'm going to drag that in here. Actually, let's store it in here. It's fine. All right, so now I'm going to get rid of all the white around the outside. So I'm going to hit W on the keyboard, and 255 is going to be a bit strong, so I'm going to go down to like 150. And again, that's just a tolerance level. So again, that's a little bit too much. So I'm going to dial that pretty far down because white's really the only color I want. So that's pretty much it right there. So so now I'm going to do a clipping mask on this as well so that I can keep it as a smart object. That way I can scale it if I need to. But so if I click this, I need to hold down Option and click it, and then we'll select that. So there we go. Now I can manipulate this one a little bit. So I'm going to add all kinds of stuff to it. So I'm going to do levels. Start with levels. I'm going to do a clipping mask so it just affects that mic. And I'm going to start just making it look really kind of like a silhouette clip art kind of vibe. Also want to do a saturation, just desaturate the mess out of that. Just use this microphone there. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I think I'm going to start over my mic here, and then what I want to do is make it look like it's again printed on this paper. So I thought maybe I will take it and I can scale it down and stick it right here, kind of in the middle somewhere. I'll probably make it feel like it's coming out of these little rectangles, but the problem is if I go there and I start doing blending modes, I'm going to blend through all of this stuff, and I don't really want to do that. So what I did is I'm going to scale this back up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the background paper and I'm going to move it up to above the microphone, and then I want to blend it with the microphone. So the way I'm going to do that is keeping the same clipping mask. So over here, the one we made originally is right here. So I can, I believe I can command click that, and it'll select that microphone. And then if I go to my background paper and add a clipping mask now, it should add it just to the microphone. So now let's see here. Bump up that some. Let's see what's happening here. I gotta clean up my sides here, make sure everything is black around that microphone. Same thing down here. Oops. All right, so now the microphone has that blended layer on it, so that feels much better. So now I can go through and it's just gonna affect that microphone. So you can find whatever feels right. That's kind of cool looking right there. Let's mess with that for a minute. Get rid of that. So now I can take this whole thing again. I can, and both of these, the paper and the microphone, are smart layers, so I can scale them up, scale them down as I need to, and it shouldn't be a problem. You gotta see, I kind of like that inverted color on that microphone. That's kind of neat. It's pretty cool. Mess around with some of these things here, see what happens. I kind of dig it. It's a little different. Question being, does it match the piece? I'm going to keep it for now because it's just kind of different. So, okay, so there is my microphone. Now I want to go into the. I'm actually going to add a kind of a soft drop shadow on this whole thing. So if I go in here, double click on that, I'm going to do a drop shadow. Let's see, drop shadow, and then bump that up pretty heavy there, and make the size a bit bigger as well. Get that right in the center. Distance to be pretty small because I want it just to be an overall decent drop shadow. So that's kind of what we're going for right there. I like that. That's a vivid light, which is a nice little blend on it. Okay. Now I need to go. Let's see. I want to get rid of some of these. Get rid of this little stand here. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm just going to paint that out myself. So I'm going to do another clipping mask. Hit B on the keyboard. Scale that down a good bit. Black is selected, so now I can paint in here. Oops. And really what you can click and hold down Shift and then click again. It'll make a nice little straight line so you can kind of follow this path there. So that looks pretty solid there. We could go in here and make a little shadow right there, which might be nice. So I'm going to make a new layer with Shift, Command, and N. And I'm just going to call it shadow. And then I'm going to hit B on the keyboard for my brush tool, making a nice dark color. Oops, scale that up some. And I think if I can turn my hardness down a good bit, I need to select just the microphone. So I'm going to maybe select this mic here. There we go. So I'm going to do a nice soft brush like that. And then I think if I can do a blending mode on that, Maybe something like that. Let's scale it up some. It's kind of showing up down here for some reason, but I'm just gonna erase that. I'm not sure what that is, but clean that up. Okay, see how that looks. So it looks a little bit like it's coming out of there. We can do a little more work on it, but we'll take it for now. Okay. Next thing we can do is maybe add some shadows to our players here, or our boxers. So let's mess with that. So I'm going to go into the boxers folder. I'm going to take the female. Let's see. I'm just going to take this actual layer here because I just need her layer. So I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to throw that up here. Actually, I'm going to take it all the way out. And then, so now I have my layer right here. I'm going to make that just normal for now. And then I'm going to double click on that and do a color overlay. So just kind of a dark color. Now we'll rasterize this. So I'm going to right click and do rasterize layer. Actually, rasterize layer style. So now it's all just one big dark layer. And then I'm going to add a blur to it. So I'm going to go to filter, blur. We'll start with a Gaussian blur for now. Nothing too crazy. We can always add more. So let's start with that. And we'll call this female shadow. Move this over. Put it right by her feet. And I'm going to put it under her layer there. And then I'm going to hit Command T and just distort the mess out of this thing. So we'll start with, let's just do distort. Let's drop it down here. Yeah, it's going to be a mess, but hopefully it'll work. So I want to make sure her feet kind of stay with her shadow because that's what's most important. Okay, so we'll start with that. I'm going to hit enter. Actually feels kind of stretched out, so I'm going to scale that back a little bit there. And then we can go into maybe, so I'm hitting Command T. So if I clicked on it, hit Command T, it gives me this transform mode. So then I'm going to right click and do warp. I think I can just warp them. And again, it's not going to be all that pretty, but I think it'll sell. I hope. All right, so let's start there and let's see. I'm gonna do some blending modes. V on the keyboard, and then Shift plus and minus. Let's just cycle. Always like to cycle through, make sure I don't miss anything important. So let's go with linear light for now. So I'm gonna scale back here. So obviously this is just way out of control. So I'm going to right click on this layer here and add my clipping mask to this. So maybe, there we go. So again, I hold down Alt and Option and I click on that, and it makes the opposite of what I had selected. Now the shadow would be on the guy's leg, so we'll keep that right there. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to tone this way down. Then maybe we'll do some more blurring to it. I can do maybe a little bit of, let's see, maybe just a little bit of motion blur. Let's see what that, no, I don't want to do that, I don't think. Let's go back to Gaussian blur and just kind of mess around with that some more. Okay, it affected our clipping mask for some reason, but maybe if I delete that and reset it, it'll work. Yeah. So that's getting there. It's not the greatest, but also not the worst. Cycle through these blending modes again, see what I'm missing. Vivid light. Bump up my opacity to see what my options were here. wonder if I did like a soft light and then duplicated that a few times. Kind of gives me something new there. If I did, oops. Actually, I'm going to turn off all these. Delete, 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 delete. Group that. And then I actually group this. So now I can distort this a little bit. Let's see. I think I'm just gonna blur it even some more. So highlight all these, and blur all of them at the same time. No, okay. So I'm gonna do some more blurring to it. All right. So I had soft light, and then duplicated that several times. Oops. Command J. Starting to kind of show up there a little bit. I don't know, something about that feels right. So I'm going to close that down. Again, we could spend a long time tweaking that, but for now, that will work. So I'm going to go back to my Boxer, select her, and then hold down Alt and Option and add it to like that. All right, so that feels pretty good. Maybe once we get the guys on there, it won't be all that bad. I think we're going to soften up. Hit B. Turn this way down. I kind of want to soften up on his foot a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So same thing for the guys. I'm going to duplicate his layer. Let's see this female. Male. Duplicate. Throw this down here. Drop this down here. So I am going to bump that up. Double click. Add color overlay. Okay. And then we're going to rasterize that. And actually don't need this weird little piece right there. Okay, we're going to distort so much it doesn't matter, so we'll move that over here. And it's on the bottom. Hit Command, and I'm just going to start distorting it a little bit. Move his foot back here. Maybe shift it a little bit, skew his perspective some. Okay. Let's try that. Okay. So then I went to start with linear burn. Let's see. Let's try this. To filter, alert. So I had soft light, and I've duplicated that a few times. Tone those back a good bit. I wonder if I scale it down again. Come back to that. Okay. So then I'm going to take these, I'm going to group them together. And then I'm going to group it again. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I can just scale this whole group and not mess up with my clipping mask. So Boxers, select my male, go here and Alt click. Okay. So we'll call this male shadow. Female shadow. So that's not too bad. It could be better, but for now we'll run with it. I'm going to take his. See here, I'm going to scale him down a little bit so that the sun doesn't quite seem. There we go. I think they're still pretty bright. Or a little too bold. I think we could even go a little bit tighter like that. Should be pretty subtle. All right, I have a little issue here with this shadow, so I'm gonna go in here, hit B, and oops, I'm gonna get some of that back. So actually, I do need white. I think opacity up. There we go. All right, so I spent a little bit too much time messing around with their shadows and their feet, and they're just okay. I could spend more time working on those, but we'll come back to it. So I didn't want to burn too much time on that. So now I'm going to work on some shadows on just the, so she should be casting shadows on the guy back there. So I'm going to back up a little bit here. So these are all our ground shadows. So I'm going to put here, I'm going to type that, ground shadows. So now I'm going to make a new layer, Shift Command N, call it female shadow on male. So I'm going to select just the male. So I'm going to go into this one and click, so now I have that. So I'm going to select my layer that I want to draw on, hit B on the keyboard, make it nice and soft, or bump up that size a little bit. I think I'm going to do, let's see, let's test it. So I'm going to draw on him. Just want to see which blending mode I really want to use here. I mean, last time I did soft light and a lot of it, but I think what I want to do is add a little bit of brown to it. Let me erase that. Let's try again. Okay, so that's soft light, so I'm going to cycle through those. Sometimes you have to hit V kind of for your move tool to cycle through those again. So I don't want it straight black and I don't want it so brown. Might be a situation where let's go a little bit more brown here. Blend some of that in. Let me just dial it way back. Well, let's just add it on there and see what happens. Okay, so where would these shadows be? It'd be on the keyboard. We're gonna have a little bit on his leg here. So I'm gonna, oops, let's see. Yeah, I'll need to paint out on her leg. So I'm just gonna hit one like right there. I'll come back to that and fix it. So then, be a little bit up here probably. Kind of follow him down along his leg there. Let's mess with that for a minute. Let's see. So I'm going to deselect that. I want to select the woman now and add a clipping mask to that. There we go. Again, Alt and then click that little button. So that looks about right. So now we're going to scale. We're going to turn that way down. All right, so now I'm going to move into adding some extra fun stuff on here. So if you remember the thing that the little mood board we had made, yeah, threw in some images that had some cool little things in here. So I love these little like lines and dots and things that we can add. Even this is really cool, these little words on the outside of the circle. So maybe we'll do something like that. around it as well. So I'm going to move this out of the way. So let's mess with that. I'm going to drop some of these things down. So these are our boxers there. Then we have the shadows as well. So we'll just throw all this together. Call this boxers main. That way I can turn that off and it all goes away. So, okay. So I'm going to add, let's see, I usually do shapes and dotted lines and stuff inside of Illustrator and then move it over, but we'll figure out a way to do this in here. So I'm going to make a new layer, Shift New In, and then I'm going to take my text tool. I guess I don't have to do that, but actually, no, I'm going to take my shape tool here and do an ellipses and draw a square. I'm holding or draw a circle. I'm holding down Shift so that it stays nice and symmetrical. Then I'm going to hit T on the keyboard, take my mouse right to the outside to where I get that little squiggly dotted line. And I'm going to add just a whole lot of periods in here. I'm just going to let that go for a minute. And then I'm going to highlight those and go to my text layer and scale those way down here. Okay, so I can turn off this here and go back into A on the keyboard. Let's see how I select that. There we go. So I'll highlight those, or highlight all of them, copy them, and just add a whole bunch more. Maybe bump that size up a little bit, and I'm going to make those a kind of a grayish color. Okay, maybe we can space them out as well. I'm sure this is just so wrong on so many levels as far as design goes, but you know what? That's okay. It's getting done. All right. Now I'm going to scale this down. Hit Command T. I'm just going to scale this whole thing down a good bit. Move it up. Try to get right in the center there. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'll scale it up a little bit more. It's a tough call, tough call. It's like 6. Oops. This can be scaled down a little bit. So, color. Okay. Now maybe we'll do some lines as well. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to add a whole lot of dots in here. Okay, we'll scale these back down too. Some more around there. 6. Oops. Copy it again. Just going to have like a nice long line. Okay. I'm just probably just getting torn apart by the professionals out there. All right, so that feels interesting. Command J again, rotate that maybe 45. Try to put that somewhere in the center there. And there's really no like rhyme or reason to what I'm going for here. Might even like delete a bunch of these. So I'll get this kind of a half line, thing going on here. Maybe we can duplicate that again, rotate it. Something like that. Maybe a tad bit more there. So who knows really what I'm going for. And then I'm going to turn those, just turn them all down opacity wise a decent amount. There we go. Eventually I'll add a mask to cover up crossing through our characters, but that'll be fine for now. So if I wanted to add these words, I really like the way, I really like this idea here. So maybe we can incorporate that into this to give the idea of what throwing shade is, even though most people probably know. So let's just make a Let's make it worse. I'm gonna type in slander, right? And then what were some of the other fonts we had going on? Additional fonts. Let's try that. Let's throw that up here. Maybe not quite so thick there. And this, again, this font is not all that important, but we'll, okay. So now let's do, I'm gonna right justify this. Slide this up here. Oops. All right, so here's my word. I'm gonna turn that down a good bit, blending wise. And then I think so I'm gonna hit, let's see. I'm gonna put it like right on the, kind of right on the side here. And I'm gonna hit Command T. And then since my anchor point's right here in the middle, I'm gonna rotate it. And now it kind of follows along that space. There may be some fixing we need to do, but we're gonna just go with it for now. Probably will add a little bit more space. There we go. It feels a bit too big, so I'm gonna knock that down pretty small. Maybe we'll do a blending mode on that as well. So it's pretty faded, kind of like that. All right, so let's do a few of those. So duplicate that. I'm gonna rotate this. And again, it's not going to be perfect, but it'll be pretty close. All right, so we're getting to a place now where it's starting to feel pretty good. Kind of like where we've got our main image sort of locked in. So now we can really start just adding a bunch of flair to it. So I've just added a bunch of words here that are kind of synonyms of throwing shade. So I'm going to throw all these into just a folder so I can have all those. I'm just going to put synonyms. That is not even right, but that's fine. Okay, so this feels pretty good. Then we're going to go to, let's see, here's all our lines right here. So I'm going to duplicate this and call this dotted lines. Sorry, not duplicate, but group it, dotted lines. All right, and now I want to add a clipping mask to that so that I don't have, it's not crossing in front of their faces. So I'm going to go into boxers here. So I think I can do Command and click on hers. I think I can hold down Shift and also click on the male as well. So female, male. So now we got both of them. That's perfect. And then I can go to my dotted lines and click on this. I need to hold on Option, click, and now it's behind them. Perfect. Okay, so we have our main thing here. I'm almost thinking about taking these blue and red and like stretching them all the way to the side, but I'll come back to that. All right, what else can we add? Maybe we can add kind of maybe a sort of a pop of color behind them. So now it's all just kind of playing at this point. So I'm gonna duplicate this ellipses that we made earlier, and I'm gonna make this kind of a kind of dark color here. I'm also gonna put that same thing on top of that, unlink it so that I can scale this all by itself. I'm gonna drop that right in the middle here, somewhere around there. I didn't do a good job of keeping my circles symmetrical, but I can fix it later. All right, so let's do some blending modes on that. Something kind of like that's pretty cool. Again, just something super subtle. I don't want to go crazy with it. Yeah, I kind of like that right there. So let's go with that. If I duplicate it one more time. Then I might also hide this as well on that clipping mask. So I can go to my rectangle, hold down Command, click on that, and hold down Shift, click on that, and then add this to my clipping mask. I'm going to click on my clipping mask, hit B on the keyboard, make it pretty big, and switch that to black, and then paint over that. Make sure my is on normal. That's good. Okay. All right, that's kind of cool. All right, so I took some time to get back into it and mess around with just a bunch of little things. And, you know, like I was saying, this is where you just kind of start adding stuff and see what works and what doesn't. So, like I said, I ended up extending out the side of these banners just to make it feel a little bit more even. So the way I did that is I just went into the original documents and I made those a lot wider by going to Image and Canvas Size, and then stretching out that blue banner that was down there. Added these lines in there as well, and also added a tagline, which you can see down here. So on one it says, "If it ain't nice," then this one says, "Keep your mouth shut." So I don't know if they'll want to keep that, but I wanted to add it just in case. So I did that for both of them. Same thing here, is I just made it nice and long. So those are good to go. So if I go back here, what else did we add? Added these little icons around here. So what I did is I went to things like Pixabay or things like Google Images, where you can change the usage rights to see what is can be used and what can't be used. So you can find some stuff through there, or again through Pixabay or some free clip art and stuff. So threw those in there. They were just black and white images, so once those are in there, you can do some blending modes to blend them like that. So a few different random images to represent gossip in your heart and all that kind of stuff. So other than that, I then added this border. That's just a rectangle tool with just the stroke selected, and so I can turn this fill off and then just do the stroke. And then so if I had, let me show you real quickly. Turn this off here, add a stroke. So if I had a line here that was just a stroke, I would add a clipping mask to that, and I'd hit B on the keyboard, and I'd get one of those grungy brushes that we were messing with earlier. So for instance, this one here, scale that one way down. Then I can go around and get my brush to be a little bigger. There we go. Kind of roughen up those edges a little bit with this brush, something like that. So that's how I did the border. Same thing down here is I added a little key verse that would be going with this series. And I think that's really it. Oh, then I did this little sun lines back here. So originally I was going to do that behind the microphone, but it felt like it just worked when I put it back here. So the way I did that was, let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, so here it is. So what I did is I took that paper background that I already had, dropped it up there, bumped up the opacity, I think, a little bit, maybe changed the blending mode. And then, again, I made a clipping mask. And then I took a brush, which was some ones that I've had for a while, these little sunline brushes. And there they are there. So I clicked on there to make a mask that was just this shape, and then feathered the edges around that to create that look there. So I thought it added kind of a nice, kind of a Nacho Libre kind of vibe to it. So let's see what else. I believe that's about it. Yeah, if you have any questions on any of this, if you got hung up at all, please let me know. Sorry it took so long. Hopefully you're able to fast forward and get through some of it and learn something that you're looking for. So thanks again for your patience and your time, and we will see you again.